Hello, everybody. Welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door and join us to preview the Euro 2020 final on Sunday at 8 p.m. between Italy and England are in the Euro 2020 final. So look, I always say please leave your bias at the door. Contrary to what some people have been telling me on social media this week, that doesn't mean you can't celebrate a goal for the team you support. What that does mean is that you are able to have an objective and balanced conversation about football, which I'm going to try my absolute hardest to do now as we preview a game. Let's be honest, I'm absolutely desperate for England to win a first major final. As we all know, the numbers in 55 years, the first final for England in my lifetime. After defeats in 3 semi-finals, England made it through against the Danes, the Italians against the Spanish. Well, shall we start there and we'll have a look at both teams' route across to the final. There is the Italians on the left as you look. They dismembered Turkey, and probably when you look at worrying omens, look at that second game. Italy 3, Switzerland 0. And Switzerland, remember, knock out France later in the tournament and take the Spanish to penalties. And Italy, very, what should we say, easily. Look, it's a 3-0 win, isn't it? So 2 3-0 wins. They're going to rest a load of players against Wales, still get the win. Then, probably the one that we want to look at is Italy 2, Austria 1. It took Italy to extra time against an Austrian team that were well organised and that certainly pressed well. And it took the Italian subs bench to get them past Austria, didn't it? And Chiesa gets the goal and Pessina the second. Then, look at that for a win. Italy beat Belgium in the quarters. Really good first half. The Italians intense, the Belgians a bit passive. I think they deserved it, didn't they, Italy? And then Spain, very different. Spain had a lot of the ball. Italy did the job. So, to get here, Italy have wins over Switzerland, Belgium, and Spain, to name but a few, who are good teams in the tournament. 2 games level at 90 minutes and 1 game level at 120 minutes. And Italy needing penalties against the Spanish, but they are undefeated. Of course, we did see Spain lost, didn't they? Was that in the World Cup? We do sometimes see teams lose a game in the group phases and still go ahead and win the tournament. For England, a win against Croatia, a draw against Scotland, a win against the Czech Republic. Then they've been fantastic in the knockout phases. That PTSD removing, we hope, generational victory against the Germans. They'll be back, won't they? Then a very straightforward quarterfinal 4-0 win over in Rome against Ukraine. And then extra time needed for England to beat Denmark. And that is where we are when you stack up opponents. Look, England have beaten Croatia. They've beaten, obviously, the Czechs, who did get to the quarters in the end. They've beaten the Germans. They've beaten the Danish. So if you're looking for signature names beaten, obviously the Italians have gone through, particularly the Spanish and the Belgians in those last 2 games. Let's have a look at how the Italian team has developed through the tournament. And probably if you're an Italy fan, you'd be really pleased with this because they've come in with a system ahead of the tournament and it's just tweaks. You don't want to see things being torn up and rejigged completely during a tournament. Fans want that, but managers do not. So that was the first 11 for Italy versus Turkey, and a lot of the players you'll see in the final likely played in that one. Donnarumma, Florenzi and Spinazzola, both the Roma fullbacks, and then both the Juventus centre-backs, Chiellini and Bonucci. Jorginho sat with Barella. Locatelli starts the first game. And Berardi, the two Sassuolo players, aren't going to last the distance. They're going to be replaced. But we'll get to that. Insigne off the left and Immobile off the front. And we found out pretty quickly that the Italians were going to play with some intensity. Fullbacks, forward, wingers, narrow, dominant in midfield with the running power of Locatelli and Barella early on, with Immobile pushed up as a number 9 to try and get the goals. The strategy has not changed for the Italians at all. Some of the personnel has. So there's the round of 16. We should quickly mention that obviously Italy were qualified, and the game against Wales, they made a lot of changes, which I will disregard, frankly. Lots of different players coming in that one. The Italians able to rest some players. But the big ones, when we get here, you can see Di Lorenzo at right back has now replaced Florenzi. I think a little bit of a better balance, balancing out Spinazzola. And a big one at the back. Look at that. Acerbi in over Chiellini. Look, I haven't even put Acerbi in. I've put Chiellini out. Such a big personality and big player at the back there. Chiellini. And another big one. Look in midfield. Marco Verratti. Maybe this was a Harry Maguire type situation where he was always going to get in. But he's very good, isn't he? And Locatelli's no slouch. He scored 2 goals in that game against Switzerland, didn't he? But Verratti of PSG in and completing a pretty fearsome midfield trio with Jorginho and Barella. On the right wing, Berardi still holding that position. However, Federico Chiesa, who a lot of people thought would start the tournament, perhaps me included, I have to say, is going to score in extra time in this game, and then he's going to find his way into the team in the quarterfinals against Belgium. So look, Chiellini returns, Chiesa starts, and I would suggest that lineup there: Donnarumma, Di Lorenzo, Bonucci, Chiellini, Spinazzola, Jorginho, Verratti, Barella, Chiesa, Immobile, Insigne. I suspect if you ask Roberto Mancini right now which lineup would he have wanted to start in the final, he would have said that 11. That's my opinion. Unless you can get Mancini on the phone, then we'll never know. But obviously Spinazzola gets injured in the Belgium game. So some adversity. I'm trying to make a comparison for England, and the only one I can really make is Sterling, because I think Spinazzola was their best player up until then. So I genuinely think that would have been like England losing Sterling at the quarter-final stage, him having scored the opening goal in 3 of the games up to that point. So we come into the Belgium game, just the one change. Everything else is sorted. Emerson comes in at left back. Is he as good as Spinazzola? No. But does that weaken them massively, massively? Slightly, but not massively, massively. Look, there's plenty of good players and many ways to skin a cat. So that is the Belgium team, which I'll reveal now. I think that's the team that starts the final. They're not going to change system, are they? They're very, very set. Donnarumma, Bonucci, Jorginho, Barella, Immobile, Insigne. I believe I'm right in saying. Let's disregard that game against Wales where they rested players, have just been in the team throughout. So that's the spine. And Di Lorenzo finding his place, obviously the injury to Spinazzola. Verratti coming in, getting fit during the group phases. And Chiesa just displacing Berardi on the right wing. That's the development the Italians have made. And this is the attacking threat they've got. Now look, obviously don't be silly when you're analysing this. They're not all going to go at the same time. But we've seen how the Italians attack. It's in the half positions either side. So if they're going down the right, assume that maybe the left-hand side, particularly left back, sticks. And if they're going down the left, the opposite. But I've just done that illustratively in the fact that we know the attacking was predicated on Spinazzola getting forward, wasn't it? It was quite unbalanced, actually, when Spinazzola was in the team. Older viewers will remember Brian Clough and Viv Anderson at Nottingham Forest, when Forest were kings of Europe, weren't they? Where basically Viv Anderson was so athletic, he'd basically get up and join midfield, but they wouldn't balance it on the other side, and you essentially get your overload there. And we've said this a lot, that attacking wise, a lot of teams do end up with kind of a 3 and then a 6 or a 7, trying to get forward as and when they can. And Italy were very good at that. They had to balance it out after Spinazzola was injured. But we all know the strategy was get Insigne inside, Barella joining in, Spinazzola overlapping, and Spinazzola had good running power, Insigne very good dribbling, Verratti almost as good as Insigne at feeding the ball through. Perhaps he can't do it on the dribble as well as Insigne can do, and Insigne knocking it into Immobile and then running past him. That was the overload. Now, they had to try and replicate that, obviously, without Spinazzola, but they really, really can, and it's almost the bigger worry when those wide players, Insigne and Chiesa, get narrow and inside the fullbacks to allow the defending fullbacks, of course, to allow their own fullbacks to come past them. That's been the strategy, hasn't it, for Italy, and trying to build up those overlaps, underlaps, inside the penalty box and on the edge, can play in tight spaces. Barella less so than Verratti, but particularly Verratti and Insigne. And this is something that obviously John Stones and Kyle Walker particularly, and probably Declan Rice, are going to have to deal with. We'll talk about that in the key battles. That is the attacking threat of the Italians, with Jorginho just sitting back and making the play. He's been very, very decent this tournament as well. So, my take on the Italians is they've grown, they've developed, but in a really positive way, where it's not been ripping people up and drop this guy and drop that guy and change strategy, which again, fans clamour for. They want the big Hail Mary within 5 minutes of game number 2, don't they? But it's been good from the Italians. Same strategy, in the main, the same players. And I would suggest that we will get the lineup that started the semi-final against Spain will be the lineup that starts the final. I'm trying to imagine any change. Maybe the closest you get is Berardi or Chiesa. I do think Chiesa's got the shirt though. Otherwise, no, Immobile, Insigne. The midfield three is really good. Jorginho, Verratti and Barella. Of course, the two centre-halves, Bonucci and Chiellini, are fab. Di Lorenzo's got his shirt. And Emerson really, once he got the shirt in the semi-final, I think he keeps it, doesn't he? Donnarumma in goal. Maybe we need to address him when we talk about penalties, because he's a fine specimen of a man, isn't he? Huge bloke with a big reach, but yeah, we'll talk about... hopefully we never have to talk about that. Let's talk about England anyway. And that is the first 11 against Croatia. And what I really love about this is the national uproar that was caused by that 11. And hopefully everyone's trust has now gone into Southgate. Look, not that he needs the likes of you or I to acknowledge his decisions, but come on, people thought this was genuinely like the worst selection in the history of football. But what Southgate has done this tournament is what we've been asking England managers to do for years, is to have a strategy as a team and not just throw in the best players or the mercurial attacking players or the ones that got lots of goals and assists in Germany just because, but to actually build a team. And that is what he's done. And that has been proven during the Euros. We will find out on Sunday, whether that will be good enough. But look, Pickford in goal. Walker, Stones, well, that wasn't controversial. Mings kept the seat warm for Maguire. Again, absolute outrage that Mings was picked. But what did Gareth Southgate do? He played a left-sided centre-back at left-sided centre-back. Sounds fairly straightforward. Round pegs, round holes. Mings played well when he was in the team. Trippier, a right back at left back. Maybe that contradicts the round peg, round hole thing about Mings, but we were warned in the warm-up games, the friendlies, we saw Trippier in at left back, didn't we? So he's gone with a trusted lieutenant there and a good set play guy. And then in the central midfield, Rice, Phillips and Mount. And I did check the heat maps. It was a midfield three of sorts. And whilst everyone's screaming at the sky for Grealish or Sancho, go and look at the heat map and look at where Mount ends up, because he's clearly in the same zone as Modric in that game. So we have an England manager who, instead of just putting the guy who we all love for Villa, let's be fair, who got loads of assists and whatnot, no, there's two teams playing on the pitch and Mount in the same area with Modric, and it worked, didn't it? Sterling, again, outraged, God knows why now looking at it. Foden and Kane up top, and that was the starting point for England to work off. And if we view it in the same way as Italy, as just tweaks as we go, that has been the case. Look at some of those names there that have gone right through. Pickford, Stones, Walker, Rice, Phillips, Kane, Sterling. Obviously, I think Mount would have gone right through if it hadn't been for the COVID test and the Health England government warning that meant he had to isolate. So the big one was, and I think I've been wrong about this, was that I thought this was plan B and plan A was three at the back. And when we got to the hard games, for all of the hard games, sorry, it sounded a bit cocky, didn't it? When we got to the knockout games and, you know, you can go in 90 minutes, I thought we would get the back three. We haven't. The back three does appear to have been plan B. Maybe I should have heeded the warning of, you know, basically if you look at 2021 or the 2020-21 season of England games, has been a back four more often than not. So I misread Gareth there. Not as badly as some people did, but I thought this was plan B and it was going to be back three, but no. And I'll put my colours to the mast here. I think it'll be a back four in the final as well. Against Scotland, not much changes. The fullbacks switch out. We get the first look at Luke Shaw. Reece James comes in, I suspect, to deal with Robertson and Tierney down that side, although Kyle Walker's just been superb this tournament, hasn't he? So not that he's had any trouble dealing with anybody at the moment, but maybe a little switch up, maybe a rest, maybe a look at some players, I don't know. Remember, in the toxic world that is people talking about England on social media, this is as bad as it got, didn't it? 0-0, people want Grealish in, they want Sancho in, they want Mings out, they want Phillips out. Some people even wanted Harry Kane dropped at this point, the Premier League Golden Boot winner and World Cup Golden Boot winner. So look, this has been key for Southgate as well. He's just accepted that the narrative is just going to be mental. It is going to be ridiculous. It is going to be wanting change after literally minutes of a game. It is going to be wanting all the attacking players in regardless of actual team shape. He's just ignored all of it, which of course he should do as a professional football manager in the job. And within the next couple of games, hopefully he's won everybody's trust. Look, of course, you lose a game, and what did Southgate say? If I pick that team and I lose, I'm dead. He's right, obviously, but that's the deal. We get back to Kyle Walker in the back four, and Harry Maguire returns. And believe me, I had to field comments on the channel, people moaning that Maguire was picked. Oh, he's been injured, don't pick him. How good has he been since he's been in? And just a great squad effort, because Mings played in a back four all year for Aston Villa. We even had moaning about that, played Konza. Konza's the right-sided one. We needed cover on the left side. Mings covered the first two games, and Maguire has played the rest, and barring a disaster in training, will play in the final. Of course, Maguire comes in. Very good to see him. And for the first time, we get a sort of double pivot in this one. Rice and Phillips. And just the glaring negativity around this again. The idea that Rice and Phillips were just going to sit there like Dunga and Mara Silva and not cross the halfway line. The assuming the absolute worst just wasn't the case at all. Rice in the main sat, and Phillips, well, you've all seen his heat maps, really pushed around, really rotated, and looking at the goals scored up to this point and up to this game, had an effect in a number 8 position a bit higher up. Remember, this is not Leeds, where Calvin Phillips does sit and go between the two centre-backs. It's a different manager, it's a different team, and I think people either didn't know or assumed the worst, and they didn't get the worst. In comes Captain Jack Grealish and Saka as well. So Southgate did go with the mercurial number 10 for this last group game, and he went with Saka. At this point, everyone's obsessed with Jadon Sancho now because they have to obsess about one player that's not playing. But of course, the training camp's been going weeks at this point, and you can tell me all the goals and assists you like that Jadon Sancho got for Dortmund, but there is literally weeks now of training, and Saka got himself ahead of Sancho and he got the shirt, and he played well, didn't he? So we're now getting close to peak team, basically, although with the mercurial number 10 there, Grealish, perhaps if a big opponent comes up, that's going to change, and lo and behold, here come the Germans. And I thought the 3 at the back, as I've said, here we go to plan A, which is what we were intending to do the whole time, right? Well, wrong. So we go to the back 3 that we saw in the World Cup. Maguire, Stones, Walker. Trippier returns. Luke Shaw has kept the shirt at left back, of course, at this point. Ben Chilwell and Mason Mount. I should have mentioned that with Grealish in the last game. There's a if buts, whys, wherefores, sliding doors moment. Would Grealish have started any games if Mason Mount hadn't had to isolate? I'm not sure. Who knows? We'll never know. No parallel universe exists, we think. Rice and Phillips again sitting, and again, despair and negativity and toxic nonsense on social media. Oh, 3 at the back and 2 central midfielders. That means we've got 8 defenders, including the goalkeeper. Yeah, and it just turned out absolute guff, absolute nonsense, wasn't it? We saw Maguire stepping out. We saw Walker getting forward, the outside centre-backs. Phillips moving around again, wing-backs forward at all points during the game, trying to get out, give or take that 10-minute period at the start of the game where we were really, really under the cosh a bit. But yeah, they did not sit there like a flat back 5 with 2 in front like a away team underdog defending. Just didn't happen, did it? Go rewatch the match, go look at the heat maps. Saka keeps his place. Sterling, of course, is scoring at this point. And I thought, now here we go. That's the strategy for the rest of the knockouts. But Southgate is a little bit braver than I gave him credit for, because here's the Ukraine game, and it's the back 4. And while Southgate could have got his comfort blanket and gone, oh well, I like the back 3, and you know, if we're under the cosh, we can fall into that 5-4-1 shape if we want. But he just didn't do that. He went back to the back 4, and we get Mount returning and Sancho returning, and it's a 4-2-3-1 again. And of course, the game is won 4-0. We think Saka had a knock in that one. Mount obviously coming back in, and again, in my parallel universe here, if Saka is fit, does he start? Probably. And Mount, if he'd been not isolating, I think he probably would have started the other 2 games, and we would have had precious little changes. Only Luke Shaw and Reece James and Kyle Walker and Kieran Trippier. Obviously Maguire and Mings at the start. And this is where we are with it. And the most straightforward performance of the tournament. Almost unhelpful, wasn't it? We didn't Southgate didn't have to make any real hard calls during that game, other than pulling out players on yellow cards before the amnesty of yellow cards occurs. And here was the semi-final against Denmark. And yes, I'll admit I was wrong again. I thought, okay, huge game, biggest game in years, huge chance. The idea was that Denmark didn't have Mandzukic, Perisic, Rakitic and Modric that Croatia did in 2018. And that's not belittling Denmark, but Croatia had, particularly Modric, a world-class player, maybe Christian Eriksen. But look, things have turned out the way that they have turned out. And the only change we get is Bukayo Saka coming in down the right. And again, Mason Mount. And this is the big difference, is that what do you want from your number 10? Gareth Southgate actually wants a pressing trigger. He wants someone that can look after a Højbjerg, a Zinchenko, a Kroos. Okay, he didn't play in that game, but perhaps he would have been detailed in that area. Modric in the first game as well. So, do you need 4 players there up the top in terms of, bona fide creating and scoring chances? We haven't, have we? And Mount, again, we knew Højbjerg had been dangerous during the tournament, and Delaney, and he had to patrol that area a little bit more. And look, the Danes did pass through us at times, didn't they, in that game? But I think most of the metrics over the 120 minutes does say didn't create a hell of a lot and did score from an absolute worldie of a free kick as well. And so there you have it. What is probably, let's be frank about this, the team that's going to start the final. The only real choice Southgate has, in my view, is does he go to the back 3 again? I don't think he will. I think that was useful, very much so against the Germans with Kimmich and Goossens, Goretzka and Kroos, and just getting up the pitch wide and stopping switches of play and not being, overloaded down the side where you can bring across the third centre-back and the wing-back should be higher already. We know the Italians aren't about that, are they? We've shown you the attacking shape they're going to use. It's not going to be mass switches of play. It's going to be trying to bring a fullback down the side, but you're not going to be completely opened up there with that being a wing-back higher starting position, are you? So despite if Spinazzola was playing, we would say, like we used to say, I guess, about sort of Cafu and Roberto Carlos, players like that, they're a fullback and a wing-back. They literally do the whole side of the pitch. I think Spinazzola did the whole side of the pitch, but he's not there. So, I'm going to make the assumption, and I may be wrong, we're trying to predict the future here, that the 2 teams that started the semi-finals will start the final. I suspect we will get to whatever time, like 6:45 when the teams come out on Sunday. God, I'm just nervous thinking about the moment. And both teams will be unchanged, I think. The Italians, again, is it a flip of a coin between Berardi and Chiesa? No, I think it's 65-35 in Chiesa's favour. Could they try something else at the left back? I don't know. I tell you what, a big Hail Mary would be. I don't think he'll do it. Di Lorenzo finished the game at left back. He swapped sides, didn't he? And could they do that? I don't know. Why would you? The midfield's not changing, is it? Centre halves are not changing. Keeper's not changing. Number 9's not changing. And for England, I don't think Southgate plays a back 3. I just don't. And I think Saka has won the shirt over Sancho and Foden. And let's be fair, Sancho and Foden have come in and done good jobs. Foden started the first game. But I think, given Southgate loves Mason Mount at the 10, he wants 2 players wide who can run in behind. And as much as we love Foden, that's not him. And look, okay, it could be Sancho, couldn't it? Maybe Sancho's as a starter rather than a game changer. Maybe Sancho is ahead of Foden in that regard. But if the game goes long If the game goes to extra time and then inevitably slows down, you then have players, Grealish and Foden particularly, who can hold the ball, and when the game does come to a standstill, put their foot on it, make a dribble, make a pass, a 1-2, take someone on. They can both do that. So they've got the options. But I think, and look at the goal, the Kjær own goal against Denmark. Kane coming short as he does for Spurs. Yes, it would be helpful if we had Heung-min Son in the England squad, but he's South Korean, so that's not happening. But Kane coming short, Saka running past Sterling, whose movement is just lethal, isn't it? And has been through the tournament, getting in there, and then the repeat on the other side. So I think those are the lineups. And let's be honest, it'll only be one or two players different, even if Southgate does go with the 3-4-3, which would mean essentially taking out Mason Mount, who he loves. And he's just not going to do it, is he? Because you're essentially taking someone out of... If Mount drops into the 8 position, you don't want 3 against 2, Verratti, Barella, Jorginho. If Jorginho can just get forward, you don't want that as a 3 against 2 with Rice and Phillips, with the wide guys going narrow and joining in. You're going to need to see Mount in there. And look, if it's 4-3-3 to match up, then I think everybody is happy with that. In terms of battles, let's talk about Harry Kane versus Chiellini and Bonucci up the top. I don't think they'll like Kane, because if he was just the number 9, I think Chiellini and Bonucci would really enjoy to play against him. They'll get uptight the whole game. But remember, Kane's the hybrid number 9, number 10, isn't he? And they are not going to want to come out with him when he comes short and he can turn, and maybe a bit of an S-house winning some of those free kicks. But hey, he does it, doesn't he? So that I quite like. If it was an Immobile type player against Bonucci and Chiellini, who's just going to pin up against him, I think they can mark him out of the game, whereas Kane offers you something different. This is me being optimistic. And then let's look at the fullback sides, where you're basically saying this is going to be tight. It could be clogged in midfield. Maybe the space is there for Shaw or Walker or Emerson or Di Lorenzo. That's going to be a who can push. And if it was Spinazzola, you would expect Walker to have been back for a lot of the game. But I wonder, can we get... It's going to be around halfway, isn't it? Watch the fullbacks. They might be the canary in the coal mine if it's an attritional game. Who's got the fullbacks either up to halfway or one of them over? So that could be an interesting watch. Here's where you think the Italians may have the edge. Jorginho, Verratti, Barella against Rice, Phillips and Mount. And look, England have been fantastic in central midfield. Rice and Phillips have been brilliant. Mount does his pressing. But let's just be completely plain about this. As a 3, they're better, the Italians. So you've got Jorginho, who's a very clear sitter and a deep line playmaker, who I'm sure Mount will be told, get at him, stop him. And because Mount's the number 10, essentially, it doesn't matter. He can follow Jorginho right in between Chiellini and Bonucci. And come on, you tell me, who would you rather have coming forward with the ball? Chiellini or Jorginho? We know what the answer is, even though Chiellini's fairly brave on the ball and will do it. But, that's more to say, if you leave the space, I'll run into it. But that's the worry. You think if we're sat here at 10 p.m. on Sunday sad, there's a chance Italy have won the game in central midfield, and they've just got a lot of quality. Verratti and Barella both have legs, but don't assume they're just in there as number 8s running around. So there's the worry. There's the area you've got to quieten down. And then, and this is what the Spanish managed to stop in the semi-final, when the Spanish had lots of possession, the Italians just, for the longest time in that game, could not get the ball to Insigne and Chiesa down the right-hand side, who want to come narrow. So, if you do strangle possession and you do grab the midfield, no, we don't have Sergio Busquets in our team to do that, who did that for Spain, obviously, and has done it for Spain for many years. That was a big thing for the Spanish, and we just didn't see Insigne and Chiesa getting on the ball and coming forward, did we? So, big midfield pragmatic battle there, isn't it? And look, we'd love to see Mount up and doing business up the top end, but if his role is not let the midfield get overrun by that really good Italian three and don't let Jorginho make the play, if England can be over that 50% possession, I know it doesn't mean anything. Who won the semi-final? Spanish didn't win the semi-final, did they? But that's a start. But we're in trouble. Let's be honest. If Italy dominate that midfield area and frequently get Insigne narrow, which will mean the fullback can just sneak up, and the other side Chiesa, if Italy do that consistently during the game, we will lose the game. That's fairly obvious. But the Spanish stopped them. The Austrians pressed them and took them to extra time. So it's not to say that will definitely happen. And that just leaves Immobile against our centre-halves. And it's concentration, it's movement. But let's be very plain about this. Unless Immobile comes short and bangs one in from 25 yards, which is a risk in any game against any player. If you can kick the ball that far, you can score from 25 yards. Immobile doesn't score unless he gets served up by narrow wingers and fullbacks high up. So, yeah. And then you get into how much do you stop one side and how much do you push yourselves. And for England, obviously, it's can you get Phillips in advance? Can you get Kane to come short? Can you get Sterling when it's on one side into the box, Saka the other, running past Kane? And maybe both sides would... I don't know. Maybe the Italians wouldn't. Or you tell me in the comments. Would both sides concede central midfield and leave the game down to the fullbacks? I think England would. Maybe the Italians wouldn't. If they had Spinazzola, maybe they would. But they don't. So if I'm an England fan, I'd happily say... Look, I am an England fan, but we're trying to be objective here. I would happily say... Keep the midfield tight. Just stop Barella, Verratti, and don't let Jorginho make the play. Nullify it, immovable object, irresistible force or whatever, and put it down to the fullbacks. Is the space there? Can the fullbacks get in? And I would fancy us if that was the game. Maybe that's the way. Who knows? And we said we were going to mention it. If it goes to extra time, we're thinking about, well, from an Italian point of view, we're thinking about Locatelli. We're thinking about Pessina. We are thinking about Berardi, the other wide player. Belotti, the large English-looking number 9. And for us, for England, we're looking at... Look, is the midfield still a problem? Henderson, Bellingham. That first. I know England fans will obsess about Grealish and Foden and Sancho, which is brilliant. Listen to those names that are probably going to be on the bench. Extra time... If things are slowing down, it's a yes to Grealish, to Foden, and to Sancho, isn't it? In whatever shape or form. We saw Grealish fairly early-ish against Denmark, but this is Italy, isn't it? And I think against the Danes, I think Southgate thought, okay, can you win it in 90? And then went with Grealish a little bit earlier. So, and then let's just talk about penalties, the keepers. Donnarumma has faced them. Pickford hasn't. The Italians have won a shootout. The English haven't. Who the hell knows? Who the hell knows? Donnarumma could be quite formidable in a shootout situation. But then Pickford against the Colombians in 2018 obviously did the business as well. Look, we get into a whole different skill set when it comes to penalties and calmness and stress management, anxiety, stamina versus technique. It's who's on the pitch and who's got control of this and who's got control of this at that point, isn't it? So that's a conversation you can't really have until you know what happened in the 90 and the first part of extra time, etc., to know who's in the right headspace, to use a very fluffy, cringy term, but you know what I'm saying, don't you? So, the big worry, in my view, is the midfield three of Italy, if they can grab hold of the game, like Delaney and Højbjerg did manage to a little bit at times, although Kroos and Goretzka didn't really manage. I'm not going to talk myself back into a back three, though, in that conversation. I think in terms of those fullback positions and in terms of Kane moving around Bonucci and Chiellini and Sterling and Saka, assuming they're the starters running past, I think that bodes well for England. And if Spain or Austria are anything to go by, Austria did it by pressing and Spain did it by keeping the ball and winning the possession battle, didn't they? But it's stemming the flow, isn't it? And stopping Insigne and Chiesa coming narrow and having an effect. And let's be honest, Chiesa barely had the ball, did he? And then he curled that one in for Italy. So look, they're still a threat even on transition if they don't regularly have the ball. Woof! What do the bookies say? These are the current odds. I'm recording on Friday morning at 11 a.m. Look, forget the 90 minutes. Let's not worry about it. To lift the trophy, the middle one, Italy evens. England, slight favourites, 8-11. But as I always say, remember, betting odds, don't get emotional about them. They're not emotional. Betting odds are tracked on algorithms. It's a liability, not a probability. We live in England here, where I'm filming this from. And, of course, lots of people are going to have... Although I suspect there'll be plenty of people who'll have a nice cover bet on Italy that if England can't get the job done here, at least they'll win some money, hey? Even money at the moment, indeed. I'm sure if you ask most people, 100 quid down... so you're either going to make yourself 100 quid or you're going to see England win a major trophy. No, that wouldn't calm the pain, would it? There we go. Match preview over. Look, I think what the odds tell us is it's going to be incredibly tight. I think the teams match up well. And I do think we've got the two best teams in the tournament. I think Italy were more consistent than Spain to get to across the whole tournament. They were, although Spain had a couple of pretty good performances, didn't they? England, they've only conceded one goal, and that was from a free kick smashed in from 30 yards out. They've been consistent. They've got, what would it be now, five wins and a draw, am I right in saying that? So, look, if you want a prediction from me, you're probably not going to get one. It's an absolute flip of a coin, and it could just be massive fine margins that you or I can't talk about here because we don't know them. Is it an early goal that changes everything from a set play or something? Is it the red card? Is it a free kick that woke up the semi-final against Denmark, didn't it? A free kick just gets smashed in. We don't know what those variables are, and then everything changes. If we don't get that grenade chucked in, then I can see it going the distance. I can see it going to extra time as well, because I think both managers are pragmatic enough to get into not lose, and what you have, you hold. Look, obviously, as an Englishman of my age, I am desperate for England to win this one. But hey, please leave your bias at the door. May the best team win. And when it's fine margins, it could be a penalty call. It could be some S-housery. It could be a VAR shout. Who knows? And let's be frank, if it is 3-0 to either side, then one of the teams has totally choked and not turned up for the final, haven't they? But is that really going to happen? I'm not entirely sure. So you're not going to get a prediction out of me other than it's going to be massively tight and it might well go to extra time. But hey, you can have a pop at me for not making an actual prediction. You can make one of your own in the comments if you want. We'll know a lot more during the game, so come and join me on Sunday for our 38th watch along this tournament. I'll be here at 7:45. Look, I know it's a big day, but if you are watching and you're not having your family over or what have you, or going to the pub or trying to get somewhere on a big screen, which is understandable, come and join me. I'll be sat right here. I can't justify going to the pub. I've got a heavily pregnant missus here, and look, this is what we do here. So I will be here. Come and join me, and if not, you'll get the reactions whichever way after the game. I'll clip them all up so you can see that. And that is that, our match preview, Italy versus England. Euro 2020 final, Sunday, 8 p.m. Join me from 7:45 from the watch along. I've had my say, you have yours. Get them down in the comments. And for a nervous couple of days, it's a big over and out from me. Come on, England. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button and to be notified every time we upload. Ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.